Back for more, huh? Wow. Glad you just couldn't get enough. Wow, I need help. Anyways, welcome back to my little series on the favorite albums of one of my favorite bands, King Diamond. This here is part 2, but you can start here if you so choose, but you should totally go check out the Abigail video. Before or after this one, up to you. Today, we're going dark. Like, dark. Let me just give you a brief summary of today's album so you know just what we're getting into. But before that, a super content warning. Child SA, probably not the best depiction of mental illness, murder, people being buried alive, it's just a rough time all around. So on to our little sneak peek if you're somehow still here. So this story is all about a man who we will just be calling King because he does not give the character a name, escapes from a mental asylum and proceeds to hide out in a graveyard. And this whole time, he's plotting his revenge against the man who put him in the asylum, one Mayor Mackenzie. Absolute madness ensues, and I'm not going to spoil any more before we just dive in. This album is called The Graveyard. Personally, I hadn't really touched this album amongst his discography up until like late last year, and when I did, I just remember being absolutely taken aback. Like, holy shit. Abigail was dark enough, and the little finale for this series is gonna be pretty dark too, but they, and frankly, all of King's other albums pale in comparison to the darkness of The Graveyard. So, just like last time, we're gonna go track by track. Of course, there won't be any audio because thanks, YouTube. So I highly encourage you to please go listen to the album at hand first, because trust me, having the music will make the subject matter a little more handleable. But if you've already heard it, are just now coming back from listening to it, or would rather just subject yourself to the horror without a proverbial chaser, as it were, then let's dive in head first. The first track, like with most of King Diamond's albums, is a theatrical and atmospherically creepy spoken number, which is the album's title track, The Graveyard. We open with our main character waking up in said graveyard as he slowly begins to remember why he's there, stating that it's his, quote, new home, before going absolutely batshit over the fact and cackling before complaining of a headache from hell. Quote, oh my head, it hurts. Oh, it hurts. It's definitely an interesting first look at our noble hero, but we'll get a little more insight into him in our next track, Black Hill Sanitarium. We learned that before he was ever even near a graveyard, he was in a mental hospital known as Black Hill Sanitarium. There's no town name mentioned in the story, so I'm guessing it's the town of Black Hill. King is quite the known spook around the hospital as he talks about the, quote, other inmates hiding from his eyes. Then he gives us a little bit of his worldview, seeing the, quote, sickness of all humanity before letting us in on why precisely he's in Black Hill to begin with. And here's where shit starts heading into the darkest dark. You see, it was one Mayor Mackenzie that got him put in there for a very, very twisted reason, which, as of now, I am not going to spoil. We'll get to that when we get there. So all you need to know is that Mayor Mackenzie put him there for some reason. So King also proceeds to let us in on how he plans on getting out of there, which leads us into the next track known as Waiting. In this track, King is doing just that. He waits out one of his many long days in the asylum, and that night he proceeds to murder one of the nurses to death and escape running a solid 6 miles. 6! I'm going to repeat that even louder just so you know. 6 miles to the graveyard. 6 miles, my god. Whatever drugs they're pumping inside this dude, I'll take some. Next tracks, and I say tracks because it's a song and a theatrical track just kind of meshed together, are Heads on the Wall and Whispers. Upon arriving to his new home, the graveyard, he proceeds to kill the gravedigger and observes a hooker literally going to fuck a priest, so yeah. Quote, Mary the hooker was going to church to let the reverend fill up her purse. Wow. He then takes up house in one of the many tombs, where he proceeds to hallucinate heads on the wall, and tons of voices similar to what we heard in the opening title track. The voices coalesce into one repeated phrase: "You've got to get his daughter." And so, King's little revenge plan is in action with the next aptly titled track, "I'm Not a Stranger." This track is 100% made to make you believe that the main wackadoo king is like the villain, the monster. And this is way before we get told exactly what it is that happened to get King put in the mental hospital. He explains how he's been creepily watching the mayor's daughter at school all week, claiming he knows her schedule well, all that creepy shit, but eventually he makes his move by taking her to the graveyard, saying he'll, quote, take her home to daddy later. We all know that is not happening at all. Come on now. So King takes her to his little tomb house in the town graveyard and proceeds to start our next track, Digging Graves. Quote, "Lucy, you stay here. The tomb is warm. Why don't you play with the dolls? The doll is on the wall." We're now told that this man apparently has self-made dolls in his tomb house, as he tells Lucy, the mayor's daughter, to stay behind and play with them. No, the creepy ew. But while she does that, King proceeds to dig 7 whole-ass graves and even somehow makes headstones saying Lucy forever. This dude must be fucking superhuman, or again, it's whatever the asylum was giving him, which I reiterate, give me some now. On to next track, Meet Me at Midnight. Upon finishing his oh-so-fun little endeavor, he creeps off to call his nemesis, Mayor Mackenzie, to tell him to meet him at midnight, quote, by the cemetery gates. Pantera, anyone? I'm sorry, I had to. What? But more importantly, this is the very track where we learn about Mayor Mackenzie doing really, really messed up stuff. You see, King was put in Black Hills Sanitarium because he saw something he really shouldn't have. King walked in on the mayor, how do I say this without getting in trouble with the tubes? More or less ding? Yeah, that should work. More or less ding his own daughter. And if I remember rightly, in this exact same song, King asks the all too real, unfortunate question of, quote, who do you think they all believed? Yeah, that fucked up stuff. Anyways, he assures the mayor that Lucy is fine, for the moment, and heads on back to execute the next song, Sleep Tight Little Baby. Oh boy, it's getting darker, boys. So, for this track, King puts Lucy inside of one of the 7 coffins and proceeds to lower her below the ground with the other caskets and bury her alive, while singing about worms like it's the goddamn wall. Boom. Double down on the music reference joke. I'm so sorry. He proceeds to head to the gates to wait for Mackenzie to show up, and he begins hallucinating, or at least he thinks hallucinating, Lucy screaming, saying he's doing all of this for her. What? At last, our boy shows his face, and King proceeds to take him to the tomb. The next song, Daddy, is up to interpretation. Maybe. Unless you know what it means. Do you? Do you? If so, comments please. Make me look stupid as always. I'm pretty sure this song is literally from Lucy's perspective. Maybe thoughts that are running through her head or something, saying she misses her father for some reason. But, like I said, it's kind of just random to me, if anything, and eventually Daddy, quote, slips away, which makes me think she's going unconscious here, so let's kick it into high gear again with my personal favorite track, Trick or Treat. King proceeds to put the mayor on his knees and blindfold him, telling him that they're, quote, gonna play a little game, and he thinks that he will call it, say it with me now, Trick or Treat. The game itself, the mayor has 3 tries to dig up the correct grave holding Lucy, and he'd better hurry, quote, "She could be dying while we speak." Ultimately, the mayor fails twice, but manages to find her on his last try. Oh hell no, King is having none of it, and neither am I. He proceeds to make the smart move and knock his ass out with the shovel, as he lands right into Lucy's grave. King pulls him out and drags him back to the cozy little tomb house and ties him down. Next track, Up from the Grave, sees our main wackadoo proceed to dig up Lucy, who at first, I think King makes it seem like she's dead, but it soon is shown that she's awake. It's a pretty short track, so on to the next one, I Am. We find everyone involved all back in the tomb with Lucy sitting on the floor and the mayor tied up in the corner. I guess it's the corner, I'm not sure, he's just tied up. King proceeds to put the mayor on his own little mock trial where he berates the shit out of him, correctly calling him a creep and a degenerate sheep, and again correctly accusing him of child abuse, literally just saying he's guilty and sentencing him to death. Good fucking riddance. And just when you think we may have a kinda happy ending, pedo mayor is gonna end up dying, daughter can hopefully find a new family, wackadoo probably just becomes a, I don't know, spooky kooky homeless man, I don't know. But before we can get to that, in our very last track called Lucy Forever, Lucy proceeds to chop off King's head at the first light of dawn, which, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, King says that in, like, the song Waiting. I think that if you lose your head in a graveyard, your soul is trapped, so yeah! Traps his soul in the graveyard, proceeds to set her pedo father free to suffer more abuse, like Stockholm Syndrome. But one last little thing happens. Somehow, even after being decapitated, he convinces Lucy to put his head in her backpack. Perhaps he may get his revenge in another way, after all. So what a happy little ending, right? What a happy little album. Yeah, this one is incredibly fucked up and dark, but the ultimate purpose behind the album is a noble one, surprisingly. King Diamond, like any somewhat normal individual, hates abusers of any kind, especially pedophiles. So part of me thinks the really shitty ending is basically a way of saying, yeah, unfortunately these days these sacks of shit seem to always get off easy. Not necessarily a haha Monster 1 type deal, but the rest of the album is pure pedo slaughtering therapy for him and most definitely the rest of us. So yeah, if you made it through this whole dark little journey, thanks for stopping by and holding out. I know it was probably difficult. Next up, I'll be covering what is my absolute all-time top-tier favorite King Diamond story. Them and Conspiracy. So stay tuned, everybody. Peace.